Hello and welcome to the Heal Yourself with me, Sarah Dawkins podcast. We share people who've already healed themselves, along with health and wellness tips from myself.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Heal Yourself with me, Sarah Dawkins. My guest today is Endre Hoffmann, and Endre helps business owners and individuals who experience a lack of confidence, self-doubt, and who are feeling exhausted and working hard. He removes the struggle from their minds so they can achieve confidence and peace within. Endre helps clients enjoy emotional freedom by healing their traumas so that they can multiply their impact and results in business and personal life. And one of his first clients started to call him the Doctor of Self-Worth. Welcome, Endre.
Oh, thanks very much. I'm so excited. Let's go.
Absolutely. So thank you for wanting to be on my podcast and share your healing. Would you like to share with our listeners what you've healed and how you've healed it?
Yes, it was a complex issue. It was back in 2012 when I have taken on so much, literally taken on so much on my shoulders. I decided to move from Europe, my family, 2 children and a wife, to Australia. And the first thing I could get is a job driving trucks. And basically my body started to signal that this driving, heavy, intense work on the shoulders were quite a lot of pain. And I didn't get the message. I was telling myself, I can do this. I need to do this for my family. I need to work hard as a father. And Sydney is an expensive place, so obviously a bit like London. And I tried to do workarounds. I thought, well, I'm just going to eat veggies, or I'm going to work at night because they pay more and I will have less hours. But the pain has been intensifying and even more and more. You know, I've put on creams and all types of naturally healing packages. I don't even remember the names, but I think I did not see the bigger picture. The bigger picture was I'm not on my path. I'm not contributing to life. I had an inner calling that I could not probably grasp. Like I didn't know what I could be good at, or I could lead or inspire others. And this journey went on for another 8 years. And there were even more pain. I got to the point where I drove trucks without a little touching of the steering wheel. I went that far to be able to drive trucks with my knees and thighs. So absolutely stuck in trying to do the job and make more money for the family. And eventually my life was about to collapse, to the point of where I worked so much, 50, 60 hours a week, because that's kind of normal there, that my wife started to ask me hard questions. She said one morning, she said, is it time for us to divorce? Because you're never around, you're disconnected from your children, and you just crazily working and working and working, telling yourself you have to do this work. And I was still pretty egoistic. I thought, because I applied for a few other jobs and it has not been successful, or they paid half the amount. And for a whole family, I was telling myself, I have to do this, I have to do this. And eventually, very interesting, the results came from moving on, is to succumb, to surrender to the fact that this cannot be my path. I found a mentor after that hard conversation with my wife, who said, well, we don't want you. This wounded dad who is just working around the clock and losing himself, losing touch with his children. And I literally replayed a story with my dad, because he He was never around. I never felt good enough, and I've almost replayed the trauma cycle that we had in our family for about 5 or 6 generations back. And this injury has been the biggest blessing because it forced me out of that dead end road of losing touch with my children. I was about to lose my family, and my health was gone because my kids knew that I can't lift them up when they were small. I could kneel in front of them so they could give me a hug. That was daddy's hug, and the best I could provide. The options, like every normal people, I was asking around what is the solution, and mostly truck drivers have this idea that they have to drive like I did, and they tell themselves, oh, now I need a shoulder replacement which costs tens of thousands of dollars, and then basically they ignore the problem, and then they try to create a workaround solution which I think doesn't help in the long term. Or they said the other option would be is steroids, and I didn't even go down and investigate that healing or solution, because I don't believe in taking steroids. I think they are alien to the body in many ways. So I rejected most of the options that were left, and this very slow awakening has brought me to the point of well, working at my self-worth issues. And when I found a mentor, I started to realize, connecting the dots, that oh, this is a signal of lack of self-worth, which normally plays out in 3 areas of life. Usually it's relationships. Health is probably the biggest one, when one is not listening and not paying attention and not present to their lives. And it usually comes through business or career or money. And I had all three collapse. So in that sense, and I'm probably, you've already been sharing this message, that or the message of what if a healing journey is healing our lives, or purpose why we are here, and seeing a bigger picture where it all starts to make sense. It's just, while we are in the transition and in the pain, it's so easy to become a victim.
It is, absolutely. And like you said, that you thought you did what your dad did and the generations before him. And it's so easy to do that because that's the way your belief system lies. Those are the habits and behaviors you developed growing up, and that's you're emulating your role model. And it's easy to get stuck in that role of believing that this is the right thing to do and not looking at the message behind the pain.
Well, I'm not saying I was not. The funny part was that I felt that there must be more for me, or I I can't be just a driver. And the other thing that my family was giving up on me, because for that last 8 years, through this injury, I became a personal development junkie. I spent over $100,000 on Tony Robbins events and hundreds of books about healing and psychology, growth, personal development, all of these things. Like, I tried past life regression, meditation, the affirmations, and it seemed like nothing works for me. And if there is one takeaway for the audience, and I also called someone a few months ago, and she was with diabetes. That single belief that nothing works for me could literally stop you from healing.
Yes, it can. It can. And there are people out there who say, you know, I've tried this and I've tried this and I've tried this and I've tried this and nothing works for me. And I think that comes back down to our belief within ourselves, doesn't it? We have to believe that we are worthy to be able to heal ourselves, because our body's healing all the time. But if we don't believe that we can heal or that we're worthy to heal, we actually inhibit our body's healing processes.
I agree. At that point, you literally shut the door on your healing journey. It's almost like it didn't exist. And what I found since then, and I've been working with, well, a lot of people, and also on some aspects of health, but that belief has to go before true healing can take place. And unfortunately, typical medicine these days would not start there to map out one's beliefs or what's in the way of healing, because at that point I believe we are all quietly, overtly, or covertly looking for evidence for what we believe. And I think we all, and especially who are sick or have chronic diseases, I think it takes a lot of inner work, and that's where it should be starting.
It
Not that,
should. It
yeah,
should indeed. And I think from my perspective, possibly yours, I didn't understand my beliefs until I was challenged. And when somebody challenged me on my belief around medicine versus self-healing, that's when I started to look at what is it I believe and why do I believe it? And understood then that my beliefs were actually my family's beliefs that I'd adopted, as we all do, and take on board. And they become not conscious, they become in sort of hidden in our subconscious or unconscious mind, but they play out in our lives. So once we can become truly conscious of what our beliefs are, and triggers help us to find those, we can see if they still work for us now or if we need to make changes to them.
yeah, I believe the toughest nut for most people to crack is to see and connect the dots that their mind is only looking and creating evidence to those beliefs. And I'm in the belief change business all day, every day, and I've seen people struggling for decades, like myself, because schools would never teach this. Uh, that's not the plan, to bring up a generation of critical thinkers and who cannot be controlled or manipulated. So it's not an easy place to be born, but I believe there is heaven on earth for someone who has found the secrets to healing and living an inspired life, because this is all connected. I believe there is a, looking back to my journey of, well, 35 years feeling worthless, not good enough, unworthy of having more, or having a wonderful life, has been the biggest teaching and a blessing. Now I have hundreds of stories. I'm really a credible person, and yes, I did waste 3 decades with this transformation.
But also you learnt so much as well. And going inside can be challenging, can't it? Because we need to find the confidence to want to do that work, to dig into why we are like we are, why we believe what we believe. But the beauty of that is once we have that confidence and courage to do that, we can explore our inner world and heal it. And in doing so, understand ourselves more, understand how our lives play out. And not just that, but the message behind our symptoms will come forward as we understand who we are and why we're like we are.
Yeah, I agree. And I was thinking when you were sharing this, What if we could live 150 or 200 years? There's always this topic around. And what if we started to install beliefs that, ah, it, it, it doesn't have to be 80 years or 85 if you're lucky, or 90, but to expand to over 100, and with full of life.
And there is no reason why we shouldn't believe that, because people do live to be over 100. And recently I've watched 100-year-olds running in races, competing. And why should we not be those people? Why should we limit ourselves to 80 or 90 years? And why should we also believe in that when we age, we're going to become infirm and ill? It's all belief systems that we take on board from other people.
I see your book, and my first thought was Blue Zones. That was the book that I was reading probably 10 or 15 years ago, and I installed, probably you're familiar with the book. And blue zones are these areas on Earth where there is this constellation of external and internal factors where they live over 100, healthy, and your book has that wonderful blue color of healing. Well done.
Thank you. It does. And it was chosen specifically because I love the color and what it represents.
I did research what are the factors, and I started to take them into my practice and everyday living and nutrition and all of that from those books that I felt comfortable with. But I think the biggest one that most people are not looking at as far as healthy life and long-term health, I think it's pretty much nature, quiet, and maybe no EMF, no Wi-Fi, no new tech words. That's where the lengthy, healthy life really is, and probably work out in fresh air, really going back to the roots, which I did this year. We moved from Australia last year, from Sydney, which is a 4.5 million cosmopolitan big city, to this small farm that we bought in Central Europe, and from next year we are growing as much food as we can eat, and spend every day out in nature. There's hardly any traffic here, and it's nice and quiet. And I'll probably have the internet on a cable. That's my plan.
And there's so much to it. We moved to Spain from the UK and live a very simple life. And the quality is massively improved because we're now doing more or less what we want to do, semi-retired. So it's that balance of what we want to do to pay the bills versus what we want to do to live our lives. We don't just want to get to retirement age and then collapse dead in a heap because we've worked ourselves to the bone trying to pay bills that weren't necessary. It's about, we've got to do what we want to do that we see as quality of life.
Yes, my challenge for the audience is, like, what would be your 5-6 star version of your life, other than earning money to pay the bills? Because that's the biggest trap, and taking on additional high purchase loans and whatnot for things, I hope I can use some swear words, but buying shit that you don't need. I can't say it any nicer way.
Absolutely. And that's just so consumeristic. Just keep buying that stuff. But actually looking deeper into that, going out buying stuff is a bit of an addiction, the same as scrolling on the internet, the same as drinking or using drugs. It's a way to placate emotions and push them down. I'll just go out and buy something new. I'll go out and buy something new. Or I'll get this and then I can show it to somebody. And so it's partly tribal because the people want to fit in, but it's also a lack of wanting to deal with those emotions by looking for external happiness, by buying things and doing things.
The quick fix. The quick
Yeah.
fix is dangerous ground. And I have this understanding that the realization, usually if someone is stuck in this sort of a solution, because obviously it's better to go shopping than taking drugs, especially hardcore drugs or killing people. I'm going down, like, each has its own, let's say, solution or strategy from the past. But then why life is beautiful on earth, because there is time, and time is started to squash you, so you will need to make more sense out of what's going on. And as you're losing your days and weeks, that adds up to years. For a lot of people, a few weeks before death come the biggest realizations. And I've seen this happening in my family. If they were still turning a blind eye to what they've been doing, the stuck patterns of hoarding or working hard or doing some kind of addictions, which most people do, but they don't realize they do it. Those last weeks are, I believe, the most meaningful when there is an awakening happening. So they do their homework, I have to say, because they are forced to before they are leaving. And that's a shame, because they're wasting decades and decades that they could have lived fully in a spirited life of meaning, contribution, fun, and joy, and they miss it out.
Yeah, and I see that too. I see that. But and that has been a lesson for me in itself, that I have to allow people to make their own choices in life. We can't, as much as I want to say, but hey, if you just change this or do that, your life could be so full and vibrant and live a life of quality. But they don't want to do that. They want to stay in their familiar hell, rather than step into an unfamiliar heaven. And sometimes I have to just allow them to do that, and know that if they want to, when they're ready, they will choose differently. But for the time, all I can do is sow a seed and hope that they can nurture it and want better for themselves. But ultimately, it comes down to their own choice, their personal choice.
It's a powerful insight. Thanks for that. And I found ways to deal with this situation where one, like myself, I'm coming from a family which is still in the same old mindset, and I have traditional doctors in my family. And I realized at one point, probably about 10-15 years ago, that there is my tribe, there is my soul family, which is more than bloodlines. So I have not cut, but I reduced the time spent with my blood relatives, because I don't have, let's say, a common reality where they are mentally, emotionally, and how they live their life with overwhelm, working hard and hanging on to that paycheck, and never have the balls to change.
And my family is very similar. My mum's a nurse, was a nurse, retired nurse now. And all of my family's bought into the medical model and live their lives how they're expected to live their lives within that box. And here I am, I'm a round peg, and I don't fit into that square box. And I'm so different.
So I'm really grateful for your work Sarah, and this time together for me, I've got to say it's much more meaningful than a birthday party in my family if I show up.
Yeah, our soul family are important.
Well, I think that's a lesson to learn for a lot of people, because when it comes to self-worth, the need to please, the people pleasing, and especially toward family, which has been enforced and re-triggered over and over, and there is manipulation going on, because in my family there are some masters of of gaslighting. I think it's a big message to sometimes move on, or create space, create boundaries, so you're not living your life according to someone else's expectations, which can cause again chronic diseases. And we've done a full circle.
So true, so true. So thank you, Endre. I know you've shared such a lot, but if you could share one tip for somebody going through that pain like you did in your shoulders or pain in general, what would it be?
I believe you deserve to connect the dots. I want you to reach out to Sarah or someone from the alternative, which I believe is the true side of looking at a holistic view of what's really going on. Because as long as you are targeting the symptoms, you get new symptoms all the time, because you're not getting the message, and you will eventually perish, as my dad did after 3 little diseases. So I had a wonderful textbook scenario to learn this in my family.
Thank you for that. And where can people find you?
The easiest way to find me is doctorofselfworth.com. DOCTOROF selfworth.com in one block. And I have some free resources for you, a resources tab, and you can have a chat with me. It's free. I made myself accessible, and I'm quite picky who I'm available to. But if you are serious about changing the concept of yourself or how you treat yourself, and it always has self or health aspects, then do reach out or use my free resources. I'm here to inspire you and be one of those guiding lights, I hope. So you build a lot
Wonderful.
of meaning and contribution and joy and fun. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you for joining me, Endre.
It was fun. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Please share this podcast with anyone who you think will benefit. And can you leave me a review wherever you've listened to it to help me reach more people? Thank you.